My name is Robert Rios, and welcome to my math class. I've been teaching math now for 30 years, and I'm going to make a series of videos on fractions. The reason I'm making these videos is because my students asked me to. Alright, before we get started on today's lesson, I'd like to give you a small piece of advice that I give all my students. Learn your multiplication tables well. If you do, math will be a lot easier. You'll be able to do your problems much faster. You'll gain confidence in doing math problems, and you might get to enjoy it. All right, with that, let's get started. Today's lesson is, what is a fraction? Well, simply put, a fraction is just a piece of something, okay? Now, there are only two types of fractions, and let's take a look at them. One of those fractions is called a proper fraction. And the other fraction is, I'm sure you know by now, it's called an improper fraction. Okay, let's start with the proper fraction first. Let's take a look at the proper fraction 3 over 4. Okay, now the top number is called the numerator, and I'm sure you know that the bottom number is called the denominator. Okay, but there are two other words that would help us to understand fractions a lot better, and they are the part over the whole. Okay, let's take a look at what 3/4 really means. The 4 is telling us that we need 4 parts to make one whole thing, whatever it is. Okay? The 3 is telling us how many parts do we have? We have 3 parts. Well, if we need 4 parts to make this one whole thing, and we only have 3, can we make that whole thing? No, right? We're missing that one part. Okay? So therefore, this is just simply a proper fraction. Okay? Is it greater than 1, less than 1, or equal to 1? Well, since we need 4 parts to make a whole, and we only have 3 parts, it is less than 1. And that is true for all proper fractions. Okay? All right, let's take a look at the two things we can do with a proper fraction. We can either reduce a proper fraction, make it smaller by dividing, or we can raise a proper fraction, make it larger by multiplying. Let's look at reducing first. Let's reduce the proper fraction 16 over 24. Okay. Can you figure out which is the largest number that will divide both into 16 and into 24 evenly? I'm sure some of you know, right? It is 8. So, if I divide 16 by 8, I get 2. And if we divide 24 by 8, we get 3. So now we have reduced the proper fraction 16 over 24 to 2/3. It's always easier to work with a smaller number than a larger number. That is why we always reduce to the lowest terms. Okay? But let's say you didn't know that 8 was the largest number that can divide into 16 and into 24 evenly. Let's take a look at it again. Since 16 and 24 are even numbers, we can always divide by 2. Okay, well 16 divided by 2 is 8, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. Well, we still haven't reduced to the lowest terms. We still have even numbers. Again, we can reduce by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. Okay? Again, we have even numbers, and we can reduce by 2 again. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So you notice we do come up to the same answer. This just took a little bit longer. And if this was a time test, you would have used up a little bit of time on this compared to this. That's why knowing your multiplication tables well is important. And we'll see that throughout all of mathematics. All right, now let's talk about raising a proper fraction. Okay? And we will raise the fraction 5 over 6. If I wanted to make this fraction into 20/4, by the way, this is a skill you will need to know when we're trying to find the lowest common denominator in adding and subtracting fractions, okay? All right, but you can tell that we are raising this fraction, right? We're going from 6 to 24. Well, what number times 6 is 24? That's right. 4 times 6 is 24. We can use a dot in the middle of the two numbers to show multiplication, okay? Whatever we do to one, we must do the same thing to the other. 5 times 4 is 20. Now I have raised the fraction 5 over 6 into 20 over 24. Now you notice we must use the same number whenever we raise or reduce a fraction. Always. We cannot use different numbers. All right? Also, you will notice that 16 over 24 does not look like 2/3. 5 over 6 does not look like 20 over 24. But the equal sign tells us that they are the same value. Okay? It's like having 4 quarters in one hand and $1 in the other. Well, they don't look the same. They don't weigh the same. They don't feel the same. They don't even taste the same. But they have the same value. And that's the same thing here. Okay, well that's it for a proper fraction. Let's take a look at an improper fraction. All right, and we're going to take a look at the improper fraction of 7 over 5. Again, the top number is always the part, and the bottom number is always the whole. All right? Well, let's take a look at what 7 over 5 is telling us, okay? It's telling us that we need 5 parts to make one whole thing, okay? The 7 is telling us how many parts we have. Well, if we only need 5 parts to make this whole thing, and we have 7 parts, can we make a whole thing? Absolutely, right? So, if I take out those 5 parts to make this one whole thing, I'll have some left over. How many will I have left over? That's right. We'll have 2 left over. And that's my parts, that goes on top. The whole number, or the denominator, never ever changes. Okay? Well, what we just did was change an improper fraction into this animal. Does anybody know what this animal is called? Very good. It's called a mixed number. Now, why is it called a mixed number? It's because we have a whole number and a fraction. It's mixed, all right? Well, let's say you didn't know how to just talk it through, how to just change this improper fraction to a mixed number. Well, what does the line between the two numbers mean? It means to divide. So, if we do 7 divided by 5, we can still get the correct mixed number. Let's take a look at that. Now, my teacher a long time ago told us that if we wasn't sure which number goes in the division box, draw your division box right at that corner. If you notice, automatically the 5 is on the outside. That means it's the 7 that must go inside the division box. All right? So, taking a look at that, we have 7 on the inside and 5 on the outside. 5 goes into 7 one whole time. And 1 times 5 is 5. And we take those 5 away, right? We had to take them away to make that whole thing. 7 minus 5 is 2. That is the parts we have left over. And you notice the denominator never ever changes. So there we have it. We just changed 7 over 5 into 1 2/5. Okay? Now, you will need to know how to do this. If you ever got an answer as an improper fraction, you would be required to change it into a mixed number. We also have to know how to go backwards, how to take that mixed number and change it to an improper fraction, okay? I'm sure many of you know this, but let's take a look at it anyway. I have 1 and 2 over 5. Well, the first thing we do is multiply the denominator times the whole number. The second thing we do is add it to the numerator. So, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7 over 5. Again, the denominator never ever changes. All right? Well, basically that's it, except for one more improper fraction. Okay? Anybody can guess what that is? All right. Whenever both the top and bottom numbers are equal to each other, this is also called an improper fraction. And what is 4 divided by 4 equal to? I'm sure you know it is equal to 1. Okay? I can always change an improper fraction into the number 1 as long as the top and the bottom number are equal to each other. In other words, 950 over 950 is also equal to 1. This is very important to know because when we're subtracting fractions, and sometimes you have to borrow, just like in a regular subtraction problem, we would have to change the number 1 into a fraction. And we can always change the number 1 into any fraction we want as long as the top number is the same as the bottom number. Well, to be honest with you, that's all there is to a fraction. That's it. Okay? Quickly, let's review. A proper fraction. The top number is smaller than the bottom number, and we can only raise or reduce them. That's it. An improper fraction is the opposite. The top number is larger than the bottom number. And all we can do with an improper fraction is change it to a mixed number and take that mixed number and change it into an improper fraction. Well, that's all there is to it. I would like to hear from you. Any comments you may have, or if you still don't understand something, it will be my pleasure to get back to you. My email address is rios@phcc.edu. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and have a great day.